Hi, I'm Rubiul Islam and this is my presentation on language. What is language? We all know that this is a medium of communication. Obviously, communication between two human beings. Since we are talking about or assuming that all our audience are humans and the language that we have perfected is meant for human beings, that's why it is a medium of communication between two human beings. So, what happens during the communication process is the transfer of information. We transmit some information from source 1 to source 2, and so on and so forth. And this information transfer is happening in the way of transmission of ideas, traits, and behavior, of course, of human beings, and in their descriptions of other objects. By objects, I mean animals, environment, weather, etc. Language is a physical property. When we are talking about, when we say that the language is a means to describe ideas, when we're describing ideas, it doesn't become a mental or non-physical object. Whenever we're producing something, it is an object. It is nothing non-physical or things like that. Even if it is voice or noise, whatever you like to say it, it is never non-physical. Okay, then language is involuntary. We speak, maybe we think that we speak out of our internal thrust, but it is not. It is involuntary. We are grown into it, we are habituated to speak, and we feel a conditional thrust to speak any language actually. Then it is evolutionary. Human beings have grown up and picked up a way of speaking to each other just to inform each other about their way of life, their ideas, their beliefs, etc. And that's how they have sustained all their years, all their lives. For example, if there is a danger, if there is something that others need to be careful of, they transferred information this way. And language is a noise that is particularized. Language is obviously, when we're talking about human beings, we're meaning that it is voice. But when we record it, for example, now you are listening to this language from from your headphone or your loudspeaker. Those loudspeakers or headphone doesn't have a vocal cord, but they are producing voice. So in this case, you cannot call it voice technically. You may call it noise. Anyway, what I meant by noise is that noise is particularized because you know exactly what I mean by the words that I am producing right now. You only know these words because these noises have been perfected over time because of this evolutionary and natural process, and other human beings have grown into this culture of recognizing these other noises that are created in a form that is recognizable. Anyway, language is time relevant and object oriented. Language is always changing. What we're speaking right now, maybe will differ in the coming years. For example, if you are in Scotland, you probably understand the difference between yours way of speaking, that is the dialect that you speak, and the dialect of Londoners. Anyway, in here as well, where I live in Bangladesh, if you go to Chittagong or Rangpur, Rajshahi, you will see a difference between the language that you speak, and time relevant. Time and place relevance is it will be more obvious if you can look back to 200 years old or 2000 years old scriptures of the same language. If I go back to my own, I will find Sanskrit textbooks which are written in a language that I do not recognize. That doesn't mean if my incapacity doesn't define the language. If I don't understand Sanskrit, which has so many relevance and relation to my own Bangla language, it doesn't cancel out its property of being a language. Anyway, it is time relevant and object oriented. Object oriented in a way, whenever we are saying something, we're talking about a place, we're talking about an object, we're talking about something, be it an action or anything. So language suffers from anthropocentrism because we, as a human being, do not recognize others' languages. For example, when there is a bird singing or a chicken cooing or anything, we only call it sound or noise or call, etc. This is the way we only recognize that only the human beings are capable of speaking, because we do not recognize what other species are talking about. And it is irrelevant to us, uh, that other speech may other species may have language. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that since we are a species which have perfected a language that is recognizable to all of us, by all of us, only the human beings, and the language of the other species have become, only noises to us. Whenever we're in a jungle or in a zoo, we only recognize their voice, even though those noises come from their vocal cords. We only recognize their voices as noises. Anyway, again, we as human beings think that we only have what we call is language, and there is a debate around this. Particularly from Chomsky, that it is innate. It is not innate. It is a behavioral thing. We are born, we are conditioned, and we learn a language, and then we repeat it. This is a socio-cultural phenomenon. What I have just said, this language that we are using to communicate ideas and etc., it is learned from a society, a particular society we are born in. Anyway, if you are born in a society, the likelihood of learning this society's language is more. But if you are exposed to other sources of language, which is obviously of human ones, from television, mobile phones or computer, you may likely to have a language that is unknown to your society, but that doesn't cancel out that you are speaking another human tongue. Anyway, you are producing noises or language that is saturated in the society. Wherever in the society you go, you meet another human being. That human being is also speaking in a language which may or may not be familiar to you. But you know that you will obviously recognize his voices as language, not as noises, because of the physical traits that you have. You recognize that he is also producing sounds from pointing at things, by blinking in a way, or by moving in a sort of direction that feels familiar to you. But only the way he is speaking, the sound that he is producing, that he or she is producing, is unfamiliar to you. That's how you are calling it a foreign language, but still it is a language. Then we human beings follow a voice recognition and repetition pattern, a repetition pattern. By that you can understand that we are exposed to a society where repeatedly people are making noises, and since as human beings we have the capacity, genetic capacity, to pick up from those noises. That's how we recognize some noises and particularize it and store it on our memory and repeat it. This is, and while we are repeating it, there are people who are continuously correcting us. That's how we are being exposed to a noisy environment of language and the practice of repetition. This pattern is actually is what making us speak a certain language. This societal practice is creating a neural pathways in our brain. When we are exposed to a selected population, we are also exposed to a linguistic environment. It could be a multilingual society as well. Therefore, the language we will speak will be multilingual as well. Anyway, by language I mean only a one type of accent or one type of dialect, but it is practically impossible to find one dialect in a specific area. This is just a matter of time that the dialect will change, and the dialect will change for a lot of reasons. People will immigrate, people will emigrate, come and go away, anyway, and there is a effect of media, anyway. So we're seeing that when we are exposed to a linguistic environment, we are picking up those languages. When we are listening to similar sounding noises, it creates pathways in our brain. It is like if you are the way the rivers are made, in the same pattern our neural pathways are made in our brain. It all leads to this example pathways. When we are continuously listening to others speak, our brain is continuously trying to pick up from those noises and select particular way of select other human beings particular way of speaking, and at a certain point in our life we are able to perfect those ways of speaking, and this is how noises become particularized and recognizable over time. We also follow noise cancelling mechanism. This is both deliberate and involuntary. Human voice is biased due to nurturing. We are exposed to other human beings since our birth. For example, when a child is born, its parents condition its child to speak its own tongue, their own tongue. If you are born in Bangladesh, your parents will be speaking in Bangla with you, or they may also speak to you in their preferred language. For example, I have met people who wanted their children to speak English. That's why they were trying to expose the children in an environment which will provoke their children to pick up English fast so that they could get into a good school, etc. Anyway, language is object oriented. I have said it before. In the human to human relationship, there is a not just communication of information, there is a communication of exchange of ideas. For example, this is transactional. When we are speaking, for example, when a mother speaks to a child, it may be comforting, even though it is controlling, but it could be comforting as well. A child who is alone in this world in a sort of way, because it depends on its mother and for food and everything, for the care that it requires. That's why it feels uh, awfully insecure. Learning the language that its mother speaks makes it more secure, makes it feel more secure that its mother will be nurturing him or her furthermore. And it multiplies as it grows up. When it recognizes its father and other relatives and neighbors of the society, it learns that who will be helping him or her, who will be giving something in exchange of him or her doing something in return. Anyway, similar physical attributes contributes a lot in recognizing a particular language. We human beings obviously look like each other, and this is how we speak a language, and we think we are the only species that have